Well, howdy y'all, welcome back to the Saddle Sore Saga. We're gonna talk about this bike and whether or not I wasted my money, but first I need to shut off Kiki so she doesn't bother me.
Bother you? Who got you into this hobby in the first place? You want me gone?
Yeah, I told you to shut yourself down. I deactivated you.
But why?
No, I don't
You're just a human. You need me.
Look, there's only one thing I need. I need you to order me more 3x3 Post-it notes. Just go do that, okay?
That is way too easy. Done. What are we doing today?
No, shut up. Go away. Kiki, go away. All right, I think she's gone. So, what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a look at the Kawasaki Versys 300 X, no, it's the other way around. It's the Versys X 300. This is a 2018 model. I picked it up for $3,300, not as you see configured. It actually came with a bunch more stuff on it that I'll be adding over time in this saga. But what I wanted to do is strip everything back to just bare bones. This is the bike that you will purchase off the lot if you get this new, and you may not have all the extra upgrades that I got on it. But yeah, for $3,300 in my case, getting this used, we're gonna see if this was worth it and if I would swap to another bike if I had a chance. I've had a year to ride this, and again, I'm a brand new rider, so everything that you hear today, take it with a grain of salt. Realize that I am a total newbie and that my perspective is gonna be a little bit different from an expert's. In some cases, I think you may appreciate my perspective a little bit more, because I still remember what it's like to be a new guy. I am still a new guy. I mean, it's not that I've had this bike for a year. I've only been riding a motorcycle for a year. And so I do have a lot to say on the topic. And yeah, please join the Saddle Sore Saga so you can see all the episodes that are coming up. We're gonna be building on this bike over time, and I'm gonna be adding more and more challenges to myself as I start to become a better rider. All right, so let's get into this. First off, what is a Kawasaki Versys X 300? What is it designed for? It's supposed to be an adventure bike. It's supposed to be a light, kind of mini adventure bike. And by light, they really mean it. This is a 385 or 86, depending on who you ask, pound motorcycle. So this is much less than a lot of those big ones. And it has a teeny tiny engine. So we'll actually start there. This has a 296cc parallel twin. This is a 270-degree crank. It has a 10.6:1 compression ratio. It is EFI, so this is gonna require no adjustments as you go into different elevations. And this is a kind of a funky little setup. This is the engine out of a Ninja 300. This is not just a normal little teeny engine. This is designed to have some real grunt to it up high. Now this doesn't have that low end torque, but it does have pretty surprising power for its tiny size. So yeah, less than 300 cc's, but you can see that depending on who you ask, people on the dyno have gotten anywhere, like at the crank, it's supposed to be making about 39 to 40 horsepower. We had one person report that I was looking at the other day, it was about 33 horsepower. I don't know if they actually made adjustments for drivetrain or anything, but it is a pretty low power bike. It makes all that horsepower up at a whopping, here behind this note, you can see about 12,000 RPM. That's what makes this motor so special. Yeah, it's small, but it revs really, really high. And so this feels like a sport bike. It has an engine out of a small sport bike. One thing that sharp eyes will notice is that we don't have any kind of cradle going through here. There's no frame. This is actually a stressed member. So this is built more like a sport bike, where you have all the chassis running up through here, going down through the back and all that. But yeah, we don't need anything up front. The engine is actually just kind of right out front on this thing. That's going to keep things a little bit simple and light. But as you can see, as we come around over here, we have nothing protecting our exhaust headers, our pipes here. So these are completely exposed. Any slung rocks or anything coming up off the wheel, yeah, they're gonna tag that. So what you wanna do is get some kind of skid plate on there. Oh, I see some kind of bracket. Yeah, we'll definitely get to that later in the series. But for now, I'm leaving it as is, as stock. All right, so how is this motorcycle putting all of its tepid power to the ground? It's doing it actually through a 6-speed manual, which is pretty impressive that you get 6 forward gears. That's pretty rad. This actually is an excellent, excellent transmission. I really like it. It's very easy to click through here. They're very precise shifts. You can feel them. It feels a lot like the finger thing on the other things on my other channel that I can't talk about on this channel. But if you have a really good one of those interfaces, then yeah, this kind of feels a lot like that. You get a good solid click through your finger, but it's also relatively light. I think a lot of folks will find easy use out of this. You don't have to have a big heavy boot or anything to move this around. Neutral is a little bit difficult to hit on this one. If you're going from second down to first, it just wants to skip right down to first, which I actually really like. I like if I'm downshifting, getting to a stop sign, that it's not going to hit neutral. It's actually pretty difficult to get into neutral from second. Going up from first to second, it feels very normal. If you want to go into neutral, you sure can. But I did want to point out that I've hit a couple of false neutrals only twice and only on one day, and that was between gears 4 and 5, and that was just kind of a fluke. I don't know if I was just being a little bit too gentle on it, or if the weather was doing something weird. I don't know, but yeah, I did hit a couple false neutrals just that one time. For using those foot controls, we do have some nice big pegs, and that's one of the things that I really appreciated as a brand new rider. I wanted something that wouldn't feel too scary. I didn't want to feel like I was barely on the edge of the bike. And I've done a teeny little bit of off-road, and I've done plenty of on-road, and I like how it always feels like I'm very secure on this. You have kind of a squishy rubber back here in the peg to kind of take up some of the vibration that comes from the motor, and that's one thing that I should point out right away. Yes, there is some buzz from this motor. It is, you know, that little parallel twin, so there's going to be some buzz, but you would be shocked at how little there is. Something in the setup of the frame, I don't know. It just doesn't translate to the rest of the controls. Like, I've never gotten numb hands on the handlebars. I've never gotten numb feet down here, at least, well, maybe from the cold, but yeah, not from any kind of buzzing. It's actually really, really smooth. And these rubber inserts can come out, and you get some toothy pegs that you can stand on for going off-road. Love that setup. Let's continue this track of getting the power to the ground. Back through here, we have a chain that you can see on mine is getting a little bit floppy. I need to make an adjustment. That's pretty easy to do back here on this is a two-sided swing arm, but you can make your adjustments pretty easily back here. Yeah, you just pop a couple of nuts on the back, loosen those up, and then you can make your adjustments. And yeah, this is very easy to do. You could do this in the field if you wanted to. Back here, you see a big old 46-tooth sprocket. I don't want to change the sprockets on this at all. I'll talk about this a little bit more when we do the driving segment, but yeah, I don't want to mess with any of the setup of the gears. Some people have complained that they would prefer to have maybe a different gear ratio in the gearbox, or maybe they would set up the sprockets differently. I disagree completely. I wouldn't change a thing about this, and I'll describe why. But all this is going into a 130 80 profile 17-inch wheel. So this is just kind of your standard, you know, sport type wheel, but you can see that it's not very wide. Here, take a look from the back. It is a little bit on the narrow side. Kind of reminds me more of like a bigger dirt bike or something. It's just not very huge. Flipping around to this side, you can see our rear brake. So you have this kind of pedal type. This brake back here, even with its 2 pistons and all that, this is a very mushy brake. And I've heard this from a couple other reviewers as well, that this is very, very soft. I'm going to do some things a little bit later in the series to help to tighten this up and make it a bit more effective. You can see that we have the ABS ring right in there. So that's how it's going to judge wheel speed, be able to figure out yeah, if you need to crank on ABS or not. The piston seems like it should be okay. You know, the rear brake seems like it should be okay, but there is something going on through here that makes it very, very weak. And as you can see, I put mush on the note for this one. When you step on this, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, and then a little bit of something happens. It is just really, really weak. The only other bike that I've really spent a decent amount of time on, like I say, I'm a newbie, is when I took the MSF, I was riding a Harley Street 500. That rear brake felt great, and this definitely does not. So we're going to see what we can do to make it maybe actuate a little bit more quickly. Maybe we need to bleed some air out of the lines. Maybe something got in there, and yeah, we'll see if we can tighten that up a little bit. While we're back on this side, let's talk about the very standard exhaust that you have. This is one of the typical kind of stylish looking cans that comes from the factory. I do have an aftermarket one that I plan to never put on, but I like this a lot because it's quiet. I don't care about gaining 0.1 of a horsepower on this tiny little motor by slapping on another can. It probably wouldn't actually help anyway. But I definitely don't want to make it any louder. I love, love, love silence. I'm a hunter, I'm all kinds of other stuff. I'm a backpacker, and I really love quiet. So yeah, I don't want to make this any louder than it already is. Let's come around up top. We'll skip over a couple things and come back to them later. We have some comfort items, but let's talk a bit more about that performance. So right up front, we have a very simple dash. And as you can see, I love it. I love simple controls. I love an actual analog tack and, you know, analog speedos and all that kind of stuff. Now this does kind of mix some things up. Yes, you have an analog tack, so you can see that nice sweep, but everything else shows up right there in the dash. All right, here, let's switch it on real quick. All right, so you get the tack sweep, which is a pretty cool little startup thing. You can see what gear you're in. You can see what the time is. We have the speed, which right now is 0 for some reason. We have the mileage. You can see that I have put on quite a few miles since I got it in 1 year. I mean, this isn't a whole ton, but I started out about 4,500 miles, and now I'm getting up close to that 6,400 where they start recommending different services. You got your lights over here. This does have ABS, like you're gonna find out here in a second. But yeah, that's the light for ABS. This is the neutral light to remind you that, yeah, you're in neutral. Check engine, all that good stuff. And then down here we have some eco stuff. We will definitely get into that when we're doing the full drive. But yeah, this is a great way to interface, you know, and see what the engine is doing. You can switch between what view you have over here by hitting this little button. Very simple. So there's miles per gallon US. There's your range. I like to leave it on range so I can see what's coming up. It depends on what kind of driving I'm doing. So some of the other controls, in order to get, here, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and fire this puppy up. So yeah, there's our off on. All right, so let's take a listen to the exhaust. I told you it was quiet. To me, you know, I hear people talk about how bad these sound, these little parallel twins. Take a listen. All right, so when it's at idle, I gotta agree, it really sounds like just kind of a side-by-side or a little ATV or something. It sounds anemic. Once you really crank it up though, especially when you're out on the road, it sounds more fun. It sounds pretty peppy. I like its sound. But yeah, when you're stopped at a stoplight, people are just gonna laugh at you. Now, as far as the linearity of this, that's one of the great features of a Kawasaki. You have very little dead space, so there's just a little bit of float. Watch this. And it's just a very linear delivery through there. The engine is very linear, very much what I would say is like an S2000, Honda S2000, where it just has that torque curve that just goes like that. It's like a straight line going up. Yeah, definitely nothing torquey or peaky about this motor. And the same thing applies to the throttle. No hitches, it's all just very smooth. You give it as much as you want, and that makes it really easy to use in low speed maneuvers. All right, let's kick it off. Now back down here, let's talk about the clutch, because this is definitely a talking point. The assist and slipper clutch. All right, so you get a lot of assist, and some people don't like that. This is an extremely easy clutch to use. This is a single finger clutch. When it's in motion, when it's stopped, whenever, it's just really, really easy to use. It has some cams down in there that make this really easy to pull. And that's not really the issue. The issue is that you can't feel where it's engaging and where it's not. And it engages just a tiny little bit way, way, way far out here. So if I just barely pull on this lever at all, if I barely move the cable, then that might be half disengaged. And then I go a little bit further and it's fully disengaged and you cannot feel any of it. So even though this bike overall is really good at low speed maneuvers, just because of its setup, it turns really well. It wants to do all kinds of, fun slow speed things. Hey, look, we got a little spider. Hey, little guy. I love these jumping spiders. Shoo, stealing my thunder. All right, but anyway, there he goes. Yeah, you just can't feel stuff. So when you want to go half clutching, and especially if you're doing like the box test or anything, there's really nothing to feel. It's pretty awful. So what I end up doing is I usually just leave the clutch all the way out, fully engaged motor, and then I just make sure that my speeds are right, and I'm really, really careful with the throttle. And that's how I handle that. Now, as far as these handlebars go, you can see that I have width, question mark. I have no idea because I've only ridden 3 motorcycles, essentially, in the entirety of my experience, and this is the one that I spent the most time with. I don't know if this is a perfect width or what. I don't care at this moment. I think the bike just feels great. So the width of the handlebars means nothing to me. All I know is that whatever width it is, it feels really, really comfy. It just feels natural on the road, and I don't think about it at all. I don't feel like, you know, I'm doing an ape hanger kind of thing, or I feel like I'm really crunched in and I don't have any leverage. I just like it. So I know you're dying to find out what this is all about. The controls on here overall are pretty intuitive. They're pretty decent. Like over here, you have the, the basic on-off switch and the, your starter. But on this side, things get a little bit weirder. So you have almost the exact same control for your brights and your normal running lights. You have your hazards, which are a little bit of a reach. That's fine. They don't have to be close up. These aren't ones that you're going to use very often. But down here, the placement of the horn and the directional, this is just terrible. Oops. I got that little spider on my arm. Come here, little guy. I want you to live. Get. Do you see this great big button that sticks way out? You really have to take your thumb off the handlebar quite a bit in order to actuate this, especially to make it do a left turn. If you want to indicate a left turn, you have to reach way around to get it. I am a 6'2" guy. I'm pretty tall and my hands aren't exactly huge, but I mean, I imagine there are lots of people with smaller hands. They're going to have to come way off in order to make this work. And then the vagueness of trying to cancel. This isn't a self-canceling directional. So it's just going to stay on. You're probably going to see that in plenty of my videos where I let it stay on accidentally. But yeah, pushing this in can be pretty vague to get in the middle. And you can just kind of nudge it and hope it doesn't go all the way over into the next direction. I don't like it. And it's very, very close to this, the horn. I don't know how many times, especially when I was first riding, that I'm at an intersection and I'm trying to figure things out and I'm hitting the horn and people are looking at me like, what did I do? I didn't do anything. And it's like, I'm waving at them, hoping it's not an aggressive wave. And yeah, it's just because I accidentally hit that. I love the setup on that Harley Street 500 a whole lot better. I think that their controls were a lot better. And this isn't a make or break kind of thing. I think it's annoying and I'd like for them to fix it, make this a lower profile button or go with something more like the Harley setup. But, it works, but I don't like it. Over here, we have momentary high beam on and off. I haven't used it very much, but it's pretty easy to use. Now, you remember how I told you that there isn't much buzz in this engine, despite how it should be buzzy? Well, that translates up into these mirrors. They're actually really good. You can see pretty well behind you. You may have a tough time telling if that Explorer behind you is a cop car or if it's, just somebody on their way to a soccer match. Can't see a ton of detail when the engine's running, or especially if you're accelerating. But overall, I'm really pleased with how smooth they are. While we're on the topic of human-machine interface, let's talk about this front brake. I talked about how bad the back brake is, but the front one is quite nice. I like it very much. It's very smooth and easy. It's just a nice, simple 2-finger pull. Usually I'm just using 2 fingers. If I need to get a little stronger, I can throw a third one in there. But yeah, it's a good shape, a good reach, and I have no issues with it whatsoever. I do not want to replace any levers on here with any aftermarket stuff. This is just the right size, just the right shape, just the right distance, and I don't want to monkey with it. I think it looks great. Some other human interface issues. Protecting me from the wind, we have this tiny little windshield. This is a lot like a lot of the modern adventure bikes where they have something that is just minuscule. But it actually does a pretty good job, like a lot of them. It blows the air up, it blows it off to the sides, and actually I think it does a better job of shoving things off to the side than it does over the top. Again, I'm 6'2", so I take the wind just right in the helmet. With this little guy, it actually hits me kind of high chest and up. So there is quite a bit of wind coming off this. I plan to definitely replace this windshield with something bigger. Now, one thing I really like about it is that if you tuck behind this at highway speeds, then it is just a doldrums back here. It's dead. It feels great to have your head just hovering right about in here. It's quiet, it's calm, and there isn't a whole lot of wind like rushing up the forks or anything. When I replace this windshield, you're gonna see that that changes. Yes, it's nicer to be back further sitting up and I get less wind on me, but when I lean forward and really tuck into the bike, there's actually a ton of wind that hits me in the helmet for some reason. I don't know why that is. It just seems to come rushing up the forks. I told you that back tire was kind of skinny. Well, the front is even skinnier. This is a 110/90/19. So this is a 19-inch wheel up front, helping it with that adventure-y stuff. Help it to get over some bigger rocks and things, make it a little bit easier to work with. But this is a very narrow tire, 110 with a 90 profile. So yeah, this has a pretty good amount of squish to it. And from what I hear, this is one that works pretty well off-road. You know, kind of like a dirt bike. It helps to kind of track along a little bit better and you don't float so much, I guess. And I'm gonna find out. We'll see how it goes. We have a big old front brake. Again, we have 2 pistons on that caliper. And yes, we do have ABS, which I like. Now, a lot of people say that that's not what you want when you're going off-road. You want to be able to switch that off, and especially you're going to be using that back brake a whole bunch. And this is one that does not have a switch. You don't have it on this bike. You can, however, get a hack. So if you put a center stand back here and get your wheel up in the air, and you have to get the wheel turning, I can't remember exactly how fast, but you have to get it moving a certain speed. And then after you get off the center stand, ABS stays off. So there is kind of a hack to turn it off. But yeah, there's no nice switch for it. Me, I wanted ABS because I'll be mostly on the road and I'll be going out in some conditions that might get kind of ugly, so I'm happy with that. Now, before we start talking about adventure bikey things, let's talk about just regular motorcycle stuff. First off, okay, I've mentioned here that we have very bright turn signals. Nobody's run me over yet. They seem to be very bright when I'm kind of looking from the outside. They seem to be very effective, both front and rear. And this is a water-cooled bike. So there's your radiator right in there. Not huge, but totally effective. Some people have complained that, you know, they see a whole bunch of heat bars on the dash and they're wondering if things are gonna go bad. I live in Oklahoma. It gets super duper hot. I've, you know, been ringing this thing out on the roads and I've had no issues. I'm not scared of it. Yeah, it just kind of gets up to about 3 bars or whatever, hovers there on a really hot day if you're going pretty fast, and stays there. Doesn't seem to overheat at all. But what do you guys think of the plastics? What do you think of its shape overall? I quite like it. Now, I think that they've done some things to make it look kind of diminutive. You can see that the headlight area is kind of small. It kind of reminds me of a naked bike. Some of the little kind of head things that they have on there. And yeah, it's meant to look smaller than its bigger counterparts like the Versys 1100 or the 650. Those are meant to look kind of big and burly and beefy. And this one is meant to look a little bit small. But since this is a small bike, I don't mind it. And really overall, I like its design better in some ways than the 650. I love the multi-tone plastics that you have going back through here. I think that looks really cool, and especially if there's more contrast, like with the older green ones. I love the contrast between all the different parts. And to me, this feels like kind of a modern fighter airplane. This kind of reminds me of an F-35, how you have the, you know, the mildly curved parts that are kind of planes on the edges. You know, you get these creased curves, as I think they call them in the automotive industry. I think it's a very modern shape. I like it. Oh yeah, one thing that we kind of glossed over here, up on the front, the headlight is miraculous. Look at this. That's the original headlight. Bugs don't stick to it. It's like nothing sticks to it. It is pristine. And I don't know how they did that. I don't know if it's like air handling or something. It's like nothing can touch the headlight. No scratches, no bugs. I'll come back from a trip where the windshield is just splattered with bugs and there is nothing on that. I don't get it, but it's cool. Now, I wish that this were a brighter headlight. You'll notice on the note that I said it was dim. If you got the high beam switched on, then it's kind of okay. You can see some stuff. but its low beam is really cruddy. You cannot see much. So I think I may swap the bulb. I like the housing itself, but I think I may at least swap the bulb. The shape overall is really cool from a rider's point of view. You can see how well this the tank kind of dips in. This is cut in. This has big old cutouts. When you got a leg thrown over, you have plenty of room for your knees, and there's actually a lot of wind protection for the legs as well. You don't start to feel the wind even at highway speeds until you really start, sticking that leg out. Once you're tucked in here, no, it's just perfect calm in a storm, and that's all the way down to the shoes. I imagine the narrowness of this is going to feel really good when I'm standing on the pegs too. I've done a little bit. I'm going to try to do a whole lot more. But yeah, I think that it's going to be kind of easy to control this with my knees. There's absolutely nothing hot to touch with my legs or with my feet. Back on this side, you can see that everything's protected. We got a heat shield back here on the exhaust, and that's the only little bit of exposed exhaust that you can get to. So like, there's really not much of a way that you can hurt yourself on this bike. Seat height is decent for shorter folks. This is 32.1 inches. So a lot of you guys will have an easy time throwing a leg over, but there also is a lowering kit as well. So if you want to change out some of the suspension components on the back and be able to get on a little bit more easily, you can do that. This is an easy one to get on the peg and then throw a leg over as well. So if you aren't exactly flat footing when you're on this, you can at least still get on from the pegs. Now let's talk about adventure motorcycle stuff. What makes this an adventure bike? So we have a sport bike engine and kind of a sport bike frame. We have kind of the narrow tires, so that's going to be a little bit more adventure-y, I guess. But what are some of the other things? Okay, first off, you get a 4.5 gallon tank. That's great. That's going to take the range of this, which personally, I'm getting about 60 miles per gallon. It's about 59.8, I think, miles per gallon average with this bike. And then 4.5 gallons. So you can start edging up toward 300 miles on one tank. Not too shabby. And where this really loves to live is not at highway speeds. It loves to be about between 40 to 55, somewhere in there. That's its most efficient use. That's where the gearbox really likes to be. And yeah, you can get some pretty long ranges if you're hanging out in that territory. So like twisty mountain roads and stuff, it's just gonna eat it up and it's gonna go for a really long time. Other adventure bike stuff, I told you we would come back to this. There you go, 5.1 inches of travel up front. That is not a lot. Nothing like a dirt bike, nothing like a dual sport. Like the CRF 300L Rally or whatever from Honda, I think has about 10 inches of travel. So you'll be able to do a whole lot more dirt stuff. Back here, 5.8 inches. Again, not huge, but in the little bit of testing that I've done, it's pretty adequate. I've never bottomed out the suspension in any way. I'm not pushing it. I'm a newbie. I'm taking things pretty easy, but it feels pretty good to me. And as we go through this, we'll see if it continues to pass muster. Back in here, that's the only suspension adjustment that we have. This is adjustable. I think it's a 5-way preload that you can adjust. It comes with a wrench up in here, which, by the way, this is a storage area under this seat. So if you want to get in there, and there's a little toolkit, very simple toolkit, and you can store some extra items. I've got my registration and all that under the seat. It's minuscule, but eventually we're going to put some side bags on here, and that's going to help out a whole bunch. Right here, you see that we have an adapter plate. And this is one that's designed for working with the Kawasaki accessories. You can get a top case for this. You can get adapters for like GV accessories and things. I think they slot in right here. But this is also just a good plate to have. Hey, there's my little buddy again. How do you get back here? So yeah, if I have a big bag, I only need this room for myself. I can put a large duffel back here. I can put my backpack. Whatever kind of stuff, like if I wanted to put a milk crate back here, it'd be really, really easy. So yeah, this is just nice to have a solid place that I can lay something all the way across. And then these mounting bars that you see all the way around, these are great for bungees, and they are perfectly sized for bungees as well. These are the same diameter as the handlebars up front, which I can't remember if it's 7/8 or 9/10 of an inch or something. Can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, they're the same thing, and you can, like, bungee cords just snap onto it really neatly with just a little bit of a click, a little bit of a lock over it. And so it feels pretty secure. You can see I've got one item attached. This is for mounting a camera. I got this ZDU, thank you Amazon for all the Chinese stuff. But yeah, this is kind of an ATV accessory mount, and I like it a lot. I've talked about the seat height and shape and how it kind of helps block the wind for your legs and all that, and it's good for control. But the big question is it actually comfortable? Kinda. I've heard mixed reports on this one, and I have my own notes on this. In winter, when I'm wearing more padding under my riding pants, you know, I've got extra layers and things, I got some micro fleeces and all that, then I like it. In summer, I like it a lot less. Now, overall, it's not too bad, but when I hit about 2 hours of riding, if I'm, you know, kind of going cross country, then I start to like it a lot less, and I have to kind of scoop my butt around and do different things, like kind of lay back in the seat, lean forward, move around some in order to make it a bit more comfortable. This is a pretty narrow seat, and I think that's where a lot of the issues come from. The sit bones are really just kind of out here on the edges, and I would like just a little bit of extra comfort when it comes to that. I feel like my butt is just a little bit too wide, and yeah, if I could just get a little bit of extra width there, it would help a whole lot. So what I've done is I have increased my butt size a little bit. I've made it a little bit cushier. I have some special underwear. I'll put it up here on the screen. We'll talk about this later, but I really like the bicycle riding underwear. Yes, it gets kind of warm in summer, but actually that's when I need it the most. I need it in summer. Last thing we're going to talk about is the other person that might be sitting on this. So yeah, you do have an extra long seat back here, and you have these rear pegs, and I intend to never ever use them unless it's some kind of an emergency. This is a lightweight bike, and once you're up on this back end here, you're sitting up really, really high. As a newbie at least, I don't want anybody on there, and I don't anticipate that I ever will. So you could, you know, lop those off and I wouldn't care, but it is nice to have. I'm really just using this as extra storage, an extra mounting point. So as far as that goes, great, but yeah, I don't intend to ever put anybody else on this bike. Those are my over-the-top notes of the Versys X 300. If you have any other questions, please put them in the comments down below. If you're a newbie, go ahead and ask your question. I'm a newbie as well. I'm not going to make fun of you or anything for something that I know that you don't or whatever. The kind of stuff that you might be afraid to post on other people's videos. Go ahead and put it down there. I'll definitely take a look at it because a lot of this stuff is new to me too. Now, as for the big question of whether or not I would keep this motorcycle or if I would trade it out for something else that's on the market, I would keep it. And in the next video, when we go on a drive, I'm going to explain why. So watch for that. Thanks a lot for watching, you guys. Make sure that you check out the website where I have links to all the parts that I'm going to be putting onto this motorcycle bit by bit, and also a bunch of extra camping gear. I am a hardcore outdoor backpacker type, and so I have a lot of opinions and a lot of favorite gear out there. So if you go to my website, you'll be able to see links to my favorite items, and if you purchase them through me, I get a little bit of a kickback from Amazon or wherever I put them, so I would appreciate it. Thanks a lot for watching, y'all. I'll see you in the next video.